Just about there. Okay, we are live, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Sears. We'll go ahead and call our meeting to order. Would like to welcome everybody to our third budget work session of this year of the Pulaski County School Board for the fiscal year of 2021-2022. We'll go ahead and get started, and we'll start out with salary comparisons. I believe is what we're starting with, if I'm not mistaken, Dr. Sears. So I'll go ahead and turn it over to you, and I imagine you may turn it over to Mr. Stafford.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, that's exactly what I'll do at this time. I'd ask Mr. Stafford to take over as the administrator on this site and utilize the share screen to show us what he's put together.
Thank you, Dr. Sears. Can everyone see this?
Yes.
Okay, very good. If there are any technical issues during this meeting, it'll probably be due to user error and not Zoom. So please bear with me. I was asked to do some salary comparisons with their surrounding school divisions, as we often do. So just want to start with looking at the, this is for the current year, for 10-month teachers with a bachelor's degree. And this is kind of gives you a look at where we are in comparison currently with surrounding school divisions. You know, I wouldn't say it's our goal to be average, but would to say it's our goal to at least be average and hopefully be striving toward the upper part of this group. As you can see, currently we, in terms of comparison to the average, our starting salaries is a little bit above, and then we tend to hover close to the average, not that far below, but certainly not that far above either, as we go in years of experience. So you see the chart kind of bears that out. It's very, very closely aligned with one another. Also, just a couple things in terms of local ability to pay. Really, we should be below Montgomery in terms of the ability to fund public education, but most of these surrounding school divisions have a local composite index, except for Montgomery, less than ours. So even like Carroll, where we trail them, and Radford, and I show here, if you want to just look at one example, comparing our teacher salaries to Radford City, you see we're very close at the starting salary, and then quickly fall behind and really don't catch up until the last part of a teacher's career in steps 25 through 30. Any questions or discussion about these comparisons?
Chris, what would it cost us to get to the average?
Well, to get to the average, it's and I'm going to present a little bit later. We have to look at, what, when we're doing this kind of planning, what other school divisions are going to be doing next year.
Right.
So what I've mentioned this in a slide later on, but what I've determined is that that all the school divisions around us, from my conversations and emails with those finance directors, everyone is going to be doing the full 5% from the compensation supplement.
Yeah.
So if we don't do that, then we're definitely going to be behind. If we don't do the 5%. Now, what would it take to get to average? We're not that far, but I can, I can do some research or do some modeling for that. I know I've done some modeling for example, for next year, if we were to try to match what Radford's salary scale is in comparison to what we are now. And that's obviously significantly more than just doing 5%. But I can work on a cost to get us to average.
Okay.
Any other questions or comments?
Chris, I'm getting a little bit off topic here, but just, you know, when you compare salaries, I mean, there's a lot of things that go into that other than just, you know, well, if you start looking, you know, most people are interested in their take-home pay. How do we compare with Radford, for example, on the current health insurance rates?
That's a great point, Mr. Hurst. When we the school board voted last year to use some of their additional state revenue to lower their health insurance, employee health insurance premiums, and even further, what I found was that our rates, especially in the family, the employee plus one and family plans, were lower than all of our surrounding school divisions. For employee only, it's a little bit higher, but that is more or less because we have stuck with, for our health savings account plan, $26 a month for as long as we went self-funded. So it's been $26 a month for about 7 years or so now. Other school divisions, you know, they do their funding strategy a little differently. Many of them will have a zero premium for employee only. And then if someone wants to pick up a dependent or their family, then they have to pay the full cost of that. So what that works out to is that, you know, it's zero if you want to be employee only, but if you want to, you know, add a spouse or a family member or family members, then it shoots up significantly higher, even much higher than what ours is, because we do subsidize those family members.
Exactly. Yeah.
And so in take-home pay, yes, we that is definitely a difference maker for us.
Okay, thank you.
If there's no other comments, I'll move on to, and this is somewhat new. We haven't done this every year, but I was also asked to look at our administrative pay scales in comparison to these same groups. Now, let me just make a couple points before we get started. One, I only included the school-based administrators, not the central office administrators. Some of that was due to time constraints, and a lot of it had to do with the fact that when you make comparisons between different central offices between school divisions, it's much harder because they're structured differently. They use different titles. In some cases, just giving an example, coordinators rank over supervisors in our school division, but in other school divisions, a supervisor is a higher position than a coordinator. So it's really hard to start. You really have to do a lot of research and probably interviews or conversations with those school divisions if you want to do a true apples to apples comparison. So I be honest, I didn't have the time to put into that. But what I did do is kind of focused on the school-based administrators. And you'll see here that in some cases, we don't have, like for the one you're looking at right now, Bland does not have elementary school, an assistant principal at the elementary school level. You'll also notice that Giles, I won't have any information for Giles because they do not publish salary scales for their administrators. And I can only assume, and Dr. Sears can maybe comment on this, but I can only assume that they negotiate just directly with those candidates, and they do not publish their scales. So it's kind of hard. This was difficult to make comparisons in some cases, but not near as difficult as if we were doing a comparison between central office administrators.
With assistant principals on the elementary level, are all divisions, are they 11-month or 10-month employees, or
That's a
12-month?
That's a great point, Mr. Benson. And that's another difference here, is that we're going to see for us, ours are on a 10-month. We have elementary school principals on a 10-month plus 10-day scale. Other school divisions, I don't know. I know that from, I had to clarify some information with the finance director in Carroll County the other day in making this, and she clarified with me that their elementary school principals or assistant principals are on an 11-month scale. So that probably is going to account for some of that difference.
It just seemed to be a much greater difference with this group than with the other groups of administrators. That's why I ask.
And that could be part of it for sure. And that's something I can go in, take more time and have those communications with those school divisions and flesh that out, find out exactly how they structure those contracts.
Okay.
So you're absolutely correct. That is the greatest difference of any of these that we looked at. That is a huge difference. So if those elementary school APs are on 11 or 12-month contracts, that's definitely would explain some of that gap. I don't know that it explains all of it, but definitely would explain a great deal of it.
Yeah.
But as you see here, that out of all these is the greatest disparity in our administrators.
Mhm.
Middle school assistant principals, you'll see that not every school division, one, they don't all have middle schools, and some, and that's kind of the biggest thing here. But you'll see that we do start off higher and then fall below. In some cases, you'll notice that we fall below in the as the steps go on, because because their scale, I believe, stops at step 16 or something, and many other school divisions have them go all the way to 30 as they do other employees. High school assistant principal, we actually start off in good shape, and then as we level off at step 20, and others continue with steps. Elementary school principal, same. CT director, this is a smaller sample size because not all school divisions have this as a separate position. Middle school principal, we actually are above until the very end.
Yeah.
And this is one we just changed last year, isn't it, Mr. Stafford? This is,
Yes, sir. We changed the middle school principal and the high school principal.
Yeah.
And of course, you'll notice that those are really the ones these are the two that we really are we're higher than the average. They're really the only two that we kind of stay higher for almost the entire scale.
Any other questions for Chris in regards to the salary comparisons. I would like to see, Chris, I would like more information on the elementary assistant principals salary scale compared to surrounding peer counties. And you know, if there's, you know, is an 11-month position, and that, as we said, that does take into account some of that difference, but it's certainly not going to make up all that difference. We're still not competitive where we need to be. So if we could take a look at that as to what we may be able to do there.
I would like to know why our scale only goes to 16 years instead of carrying it out all the way to 30.
Well, you know, the way our scale works, it's based on those years of experience or years of administrative experience. I can only assume that when it was designed, that it was thought that might be as far as an administrator would go, thinking that some of their years in their career would be teaching. But that's another point too, because you can see that hurts us as in relation to other school division.
Well, you know, one time, a lot of the administrators were older employees. Anymore, we've got some assistant principals that are extremely young, have very little experience, teaching experience. And if we're going to hold them back at 16 years, what in the world would they even want to stay here for? I think we need to look at our scale and what we can do with our scale. That maybe it's time to look for a new scale. I don't have any idea how to develop a scale or anything, but I think we ought to carry it out 30 years.
Mr. Benson, Chris and I were discussing this last week, and something that we kind of liked the idea of, although I didn't when I first looked at it, but after we talked through it, you know, Carroll County does a multiplier. So the principal salary is based, or administrator salaries are based on the teacher salary scale multiplied by 1.5 or 1.4. And that way, whenever there's any type of adjustment in the teacher scale, there's an equal adjustment in the administrator salary scale too. And you don't have to work off so many different salary scales. Everything's pretty well based off of the teacher salary scale, and just whatever multiplier is assigned that gets it, you know, into the range that we want to get the salaries in.
Any other questions for Chris on the salary scales? All right, Chris, I think you've got a little bit of direction there. so I think
Yes,
we'll go ahead and move forward here. Dr. Sears, I guess, Chris, you're still up on the state revenue forecast, the final general
Yes,
assembly
sir.
budget. Yeah.
Yes, sir. I think I'm at the plate all night tonight.
I believe you are.
So I did want to update everyone on our final state revenue numbers from the approved General Assembly budget. Just one word, of course, the technical update, which is going to be the case for not only the governor's introduced budget, but the final budget is a new projected ADM for us, which is 3,807. So I guess really the central piece of the General Assembly budget that was adopted is to fund the state share of a compensation supplement for SOQ funded instructional and support staff in FY22. The effective date of this funding is July 1st, which is good for us because that's a full It's based on a full 12-month cycle. That hasn't always been the case, for sure. And of course, the state funds should be matched by, have a local match with it. So the way this certification process works, school divisions to qualify for any of the compensation supplement, they have to certify that at least a 2% increase will have been provided to all the division employees during the 2020-2022 biennium. Now, school divisions that provide less than a 5% raise, but greater than or equal to, will receive a prorated state payment. And then school divisions that certify that a minimum 5% has been provided will be eligible for the full state entitlement. For us, the full state compensation supplement based on a 5% pay raise is $891,390. Now that is, again, that is for, that is the state share of SOQ recognized positions. So if we look at, just to kind of show what this looks like in comparison to the full cost for us, the total projected cost of a 5% raise for all teachers is $1,353,853. And the total projected costs for all support staff to just do 5% is $535,717. So that combined projected cost of almost $1.9 million makes the local share of this increase $998,180. So you can see that the state portion does not quite give us half of what's required to give this increase. So also in the state budget that was adopted, we have, and this was in the governor's amended budget as well, is additional state funding and basic aid for school counselors. The staffing standards for school counselors are all going to be reduced to 325 to 1 in all schools in FY 2022. Also, the General Assembly budget kept the governor's recommendation to restore the unallotted funding for early childhood, what we call the VPI, Virginia Preschool Initiative Program, that was removed from the budget at the beginning of the pandemic last year. That increases our per pupil amount from $6,326 to $7,655. And that for us, that results in an additional payments of $79,550 for our preschool program. And that does not increase the number of funded slots. That's just additional money that we will have to help cover the cost of preschool, which is good because we do supplement that program quite a bit with local funds.
Yeah.
In addition, there's no loss funding in FY 2022. I think kind of the way this worked, the way these budgets work, sometimes it's a shell game. And so I think to fund a greater pay increase in the compensation supplement, the General Assembly reduced the amount of no loss funding in both years. So now for the current year, it's for us, it's going to be an additional $184,575, and then next year only $66,193. And then the VDOE can adjust these payments based on actual sales tax figures. So if in case, let's say we budget $5 million for sales taxes and we end up by the end of the year, we end up with $5.2 million, they can come in and reduce that amount of no loss funding. There is, interesting enough, there's a learning loss per pupil amount included in the budget. Now, this is for FY 2021. This is the General Assembly allocating $40 million statewide from lottery proceeds to address learning loss resulting from COVID-19. You'll see the eligible programs include extended school year, summer school, tutoring and remediation, supplemental after-school programs, counseling and other student support, student growth assessment, and modifications to facilities for to implement mitigation strategies. This funding is provided $156.54 on a per pupil basis. There's no local match required to receive these funds. And the language of the bill provides that unexpended funds from FY 21 shall remain available in FY 22. So the payment is going to be made probably in June of this year, but they are encouraging by the budget language localities to allow us to carry that money over to FY 22. That's especially true with many of these programs are not going to occur until after the fiscal year is over with. And for Pulaski County, that projected amount of funding is $191,360. You'll see here, I know it's in small print, but this is kind of on a, by the revenue accounts, that this is kind of how the projected state revenue turns out. The greatest amount of that is in the, obviously the compensation supplement. And you'll see here, we're going to projected to receive an additional $1,109,737. Of that, $891,390 is dedicated for that 5% compensation supplement. Right. So that kind of sets up the budget in terms of the greatest amount of resources obviously are going to go into that compensation supplement. Are there any questions about the state budget numbers?
I believe so, Chris.
Okay. Want to move on. Okay, so I thought that, I know this is a discussion, but I wanted to just put some information out there in terms of, I guess, maybe gently guiding the discussion this evening in terms of the budget priorities. One of the things that I've mentioned, I think in previous budget meetings this year is we're going to have to address the impact of the minimum wage law in Virginia, right, on some of our salary scales. So currently the minimum wage in Virginia is $7.25 an hour. And you'll see here, I didn't include all the increases because it keeps on going, but just for the next few years, you'll see on May 1st, it goes up to $9.50 per hour. January 1st of 2022, which is in the middle of our next fiscal year, that goes to $11 per hour, and then the following year to $12 per hour. After reviewing the salaries of all of our positions, the groups that are most affected by this increase are custodians and our school nutrition staff.
Right.
Currently, the starting hourly rate for a custodian is $10.64 an hour, and for a school nutrition staff employee, it's $10.59 an hour. So to deal with this mandated increase, we're proposing a new step scale for our custodians to start July 1st, 2021. And rather than start that scale, moving it from up to $11 per hour, the proposal tonight that we're presenting is to move that to $12 per hour, which is $1 above the minimum wage that begins next year. We felt like it would just be put us in a really bad competitive spot to start our custodians out at minimum wage.
Sure.
And we just did not want to do that if at all possible.
Yeah.
So you'll see the current step 0 and step 30 on the current scale goes from 1064 an hour to 1465. Annually, that's 22,210 to 30,585. And then our proposed new scale, that range would go from $12 an hour to 1768. And then on an annual basis, 25,000 to 36,000. That also increases the head custodian wages are a certain percentage higher than a custodian. So in doing that, that also increases the head custodian pay scale. And you'll see currently that goes from 1287 to 1772, and we're proposing $15 an hour to 2210. The total projected cost to implement that new custodial salary scale is $149,259, and that includes the additional fringe benefits cost for those employees. And this may be small, but I also have it. I'm going to send this to you as well, but this is what the new scale would look like. Any questions or comments about that before I move on?
Appreciate your work on that, Chris. That kind of gets us a little bit ahead of the game and in dealing with the changes in the minimum wage. So yeah, appreciate your work on that.
It's obviously something that is only going to be good for 1 year unless we'll have to update it the following year.
Right.
We want to have that as our entry wage as minimum wage.
Right.
Mr. Schull, do you have any comments on that?
Well, I mean, just it may help us in the shortage. We're having a severely hard time getting custodians, so this may be beneficial to try and fill open positions.
Chris?
Yes.
On the scale, it says 2,088 hours. Why is it 2,088? 40 times 52 is 2,080.
That's a good question. I didn't notice that. I've always used 2080 as well as a guide. That is a good question.
Yeah, 40 times 52 is, unless you throw in an extra Saturday in there somewhere for them.
Or a leap year, I guess.
Exactly. Yeah.
I can't answer that question, Ms. Cox. And I'll have to say that the figure that I've always used in my career has been 2080 rather than 2088. But
Right. Yeah, that's why it jumped right out at me. And it does impact the numbers on the scale. Is 12 times 2088 is $25,056. So I think you may want to revisit that unless there is a real reason to have an extra day in there for them.
no, ma'am, I can't think of any. We can definitely do that.
Thank you.
So as I mentioned earlier, the other position group that the minimum wage law affects is school nutrition staff. And Ms. Sadler and I worked on a new salary scale for this group of employees as well. The proposed new starting hourly rate is, again, $12, which is $1 above minimum wage. You'll see currently that range goes from $10.59 an hour to $17.49, and the proposed is $12 to $19.61 an hour. That also, in a corresponding manner, increases pay for school nutrition assistant managers and managers. And you'll see what those current ranges go on an hourly basis and what the proposed ranges would be. The total projected cost to implement this salary scale is $120,734, which also includes the additional fringe benefits cost.
Right.
Now, the cost of this increase would be funded by the school cafeteria fund and does not affect our school operating budget or our local funding request. And this is, I know it's a little small, but kind of shows what this new scale would look like in terms of those hourly rates. There are no comments or questions about that. I'll just move on.
Yeah, I think we're good. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Can you hear me, Chris?
Yes.
Okay. Our contracts are 261 days, and 261 days times 8 hours is 2088. So I think that's where that came from.
Comes from our contract length
Yeah.
more than anything.
Yeah.
And the other thing I know, and Ms. Beckner can, I think, to back this up, or actually, Teresa, you can. I think the way we normally do the increase is that I know for custodians, I think we ran into this last year, is that we increase the salary, and then we back into the hourly rate after the salary increase is done.
Yes.
Rather than vice versa.
Yes.
Thanks.
I will point out that still 261 days divided by 5 days per week comes out to more than 52 weeks per year. And no matter how much you try, you're not going to extend the number of weeks per year. So I hope we're getting all of those days out of the workers.
We do count the number of work days each month and holidays. And it comes out to 261. And actually some years it comes out to 262, just depending on where the weekends fall.
Yeah.
So as I mentioned, a great piece of the state funding this year, or for next year, is coming through the state compensation supplement. And again, that figure for instructional staff, all of our employees on the teacher salary scale is $1,353,853, and that's includes the additional cost of those fringe benefits. And I have, in my communications with surrounding school divisions, every one has said they're proposing to give the full 5% increase for next year.
Yeah.
And so giving something less than that will put us significantly behind those localities.
Right.
So this is this is just really taking our current salary scale and adding the 5% to those salaries. And this is what what that looks like. I didn't really make any other changes to that. So those increments and steps by percentage are still going to remain the same.
Okay.
Also, as part of that compensation supplement, the budget bill is to give it that amount to all support staff as well. So the total projected cost of implementing that 5% salary increase for support staff is $485,918. Now that does not include the increase for custodians, because that proposed new pay scale that I showed incorporates that the pay increase, or school nutrition staff, because again, their scale incorporates the pay increase, and that's going to be funded through the school cafeteria fund. And that includes, so basically both the instructional and support staff, that includes everyone. That includes administrators, that includes teaching staff, that includes bus drivers, paraprofessionals. We don't make any distinctions, and we don't make any distinctions. We don't classify certain positions as SOQ positions and certain positions as non-SOQ positions. So this is basically everyone that's on a contract. I do want to share some good news regarding our employee health insurance program. We had a renewal meeting last week with the health insurance consultants, and our medical insurance renewal showing a decrease in premium equivalents for next year. Anthem's recommendation is 16%, a decrease of 16%, but our health insurance consultants, their analysis took in more months of claims experience, and theirs came up with a decrease of 12%. Now, just to explain something, when I say premium equivalents, because we're self-funded, we are basically setting our own premiums and paying those into our health insurance fund. So when we say it's a recommendation by Anthem, they're not sending us a bill for our premiums to be 16% less. We're actually paying in ourselves into the fund. So that gives us a latitude how we want to handle this. We know that some of this reduction in our claims experience is resulting from the COVID-19 pandemic. People making fewer doctor visits, deferring elective surgeries and such. We saw that, and that was most evident really in the first 6 months, I guess, of the pandemic. Our claims just really went significantly down, while we continued to pay the same amount into the fund. So those gains, or that reduction in our claims, is not expected to continue as things are opening up and people are going to the doctor more and so forth. Our dental insurance renewal showed an increase of 3% to cover the trend in dental claims. But in comparison to the medical program, that's really a very small piece of that pie. So what this means is, for us, is that at the very least, this decrease in projection for our medical insurance program would allow us to maintain our current employee and employer rates for next year. So that's terrific news for us. Of course, if we chose to actually realize any of that, and have a decrease in premiums, our premium equivalent for our employees and or the school system, we would want to do that cautiously and not lower rates too much so that we would have to be forced to raise them the following year.
Chris, do you know currently what our reserve is setting at?
It's right. I think, Mr. Hurst, it's right at about 6 million right now.
That's that's considerably higher than where we were at a year and a half ago, or a year ago rather. But I would agree with you. we, over the last 5 years, 6 years, we've probably cut health insurance rates in half, roughly. If you look at the overall cost of our health insurance rates for employees. Yeah, I would advise to move cautiously on lowering health insurance premiums right at the moment. We've been very fortunate to be able to lower those rates, and if we could hold harmless for our employees, I think that would be a good thing.
Would it be worth looking at giving them a one-time rebate?
It's something we could consider, Dr. Cash. I mean, that's a thought. That would be I don't want, how do I want to put it? That is easier. That is more of a comes across more as a one-time action rather than a some type of a thing that folks might want to adjust their budget, their own personal budget on a reduction in premiums. That's something we could discuss.
I still deplore the fact that we were unable to give them the bonuses at the holidays that the surrounding counties did. And if we could somehow do something like this to thank them for all the work that they've done, it would be, it would extend a lot of goodwill.
This would be only beneficial to those who buy into the health insurance, though. It wouldn't be for all employees. And we've been trying to make sure we reiterate the message that yes, we didn't give a bonus at the holidays, but we gave raises this year, whereas most of those divisions didn't. So they were going back and trying to once their budgets turned out to be better than what they anticipated, they issued those bonuses, whereas we were paying the money up front because we felt confident that we had budgeted correctly for this year. So I can't stress that enough as people bring those up, that it's not that we didn't do anything. We've been doing it all year. We just, we were confident in Mr. Stafford's numbers and our projections, and we moved forward that way last year.
And that is a good point.
And we do have a meeting scheduled with county staff members on Friday to discuss this renewal and kind of brainstorm about funding strategies for next year. So that I think at any rate, again, we should celebrate no increase for next year, and explore the possibility of some kind of reduction. But again, I know our health insurance consultants really were strongly advised us, if we were going to do anything, don't reduce them the full double digits. Like if we were going to do anything, it would be a much more conservative reduction.
Yeah.
Obviously, that this is something that we would come back to the school board for discussion and your approval before we would make any decision. But we're kind of exploring our options might be for next year currently. Something that another bit of, I guess, budgeting, as Dr. Sears mentioned when we were crafting our budget last year for our current budget cycle, because there were so many unknowns that if you recall, it was the start of the pandemic, and we met and approved a proposed budget. And I think as you all were voting on it, we knew that night that it was not going to be a final budget in any sense of the word, just because of what was going on in our country at the moment. And of course, the General Assembly did unallot many of those budget revenue increases that they originally proposed for school divisions. But we did, in an abundance of caution, included a contingency in our current year's budget $345,167. That was to deal with help deal with unknown costs related to COVID-19. We did not have any stimulus funding at that time, and also possible decreases in state revenues and student enrollments. We had I had a lot of fear about our state sales taxes, and those fears, fortunately, were never materialized. And our state sales taxes at this point in the year are actually above are ahead of budget. So go figure. But now that we have stimulus funding to help address our COVID-19 related costs, and those other areas are somewhat stable, we're recommending that this contingency be reallocated for next year to be applied to school board budget priorities as well. So this is just a recap of kind of what I've talked about here this evening. The changes in revenue, again, the projected state revenue increase and the air budget contingency gives us about 1.4 or 1,454,904 in revenue that can be used for your budget priorities. Just to list a few, and these are not mine. This is just putting proposals or things on paper. Again, the 5% increase plus a step for teachers is the 1,353,000 for support staff, 485,918, and then the new pay scale for custodians to move them above minimum wage is 149,259. Again, that does not include the school nutrition employees in this in the school operating budget. So if you compare just those three budget priorities alone and the change in revenue, that creates a shortfall of 534,126 in other funds or savings that would have to be identified in order to fund these budget priorities. So I'm going to stop talking and let the school board talk.
We'll open it up. Anyone have any questions or comments for Mr. Stafford? It's kind of quiet.
I'm amazed that the shortfall is that minimal.
Yeah.
Really, I thought it was going to be a lot. That was going to be a much bigger number. So thank you, Chris and Dr. Sears.
And just to update the board on we had a large number of new positions that were requested for next year, and we were able to take care of a couple of those with the stimulus money that we're receiving. But there are strings attached to that, so we couldn't use the stimulus money to create all of the positions. A concern that we have is with our plan to go to a virtual program next year for the students who want to remain all virtual, and there will be some tuition attached to that. Our plan is to reassign all of our current virtual teachers back to their home schools, and the principals will make the grade level assignments. And there would be the potential down the road to reduce teaching faculty based on however many students enroll in the full-time virtual, but we do not have a good enough read on those numbers yet to really make those cuts for next year. So we would like to move forward with keeping all of our teaching positions, those numbers the same for next year as they are this year, and then assessing it once the enrollment stabilizes in the virtual program. And if positions can be eliminated that would help fund the tuition for the virtual students that we're going to have to pay, we just handle that through attrition over the next couple of years rather than handling any other way. But it does limit our ability to create new positions if we're going to sustain teaching positions and have to pay the tuition for the virtual students next year.
If students didn't do well with virtual this year, will they be allowed to do virtual next year?
You know, that conversation is going on across the region, Mr. Benson, and there were different pieces of legislation that were dealing with that. And I don't yet know what made it out with the governor's signature and what didn't. And we'll do a little more research on that. But, you know, if we're allowed to, everyone, I believe, is planning to put some stipulations in there. And you know, there had to be some demonstration of success in the virtual program for the student to continue fully virtual next year. However, if we still have to start the year with all the COVID mitigation strategies that are in place, then we may have to continue working with students whose parents are holding them out because of health concerns, even if they were not as successful as we wanted them to be this year. But eventually, we would have, if not at the very beginning of next year, we would put requirements in place for students to participate in the full virtual program. I know some school divisions are using a C average. They had to maintain a C average in the previous semester in their virtual classes to enroll for the next semester. And I imagine we will have those conversations, and we will put something in place as soon as it's allowed to act as a screening instrument.
Okay.
So we'll still get to count them as our enrollment, but we're going to pay the tuition, which might be over and above what we receive.
It'll be much less than what we receive. We'll, you know, I think there are 3 different programs that were approved by the regional board, and the most expensive of them is about $2,500 a year. So we still will receive funding for that student that can go, you know, toward we have to supply them with their technology needs, and we'll have an ITRT assigned to the virtual students to act as a liaison between the virtual programs, and these students are still eligible for to participate in extra and co-curricular activities, even if they are all virtual. So there will be a lot of different things going on for these students that you don't typically think of for students who are in a virtual program. But yes, they would be on our enrollment, and we would get the full funding for them.
But that's still, it would be reduced by maybe as much as $2,500.
Yes, yes.
That funding, and we still got to continue with everything that we do for students.
Yes.
And teachers, even without that money. Okay.
Yeah, we still have to provide counseling for them, and all they are still eligible. Will be eligible for the nutrition program and making meals available, similar to how we've done this year with our virtual students. All of that should still be in place.
Any other comments for Mr. Stafford or Dr. Sears?
Chris, I would like for you to go ahead and look at what it would cost us in addition to the 5% increase to get all our teachers' salaries up to the average for the region.
Yes, sir. I did a scale. I didn't include it here tonight, but just while I was doing the calculations, I did a scale to get us to pretty close, almost dead on with Radford City Schools pay scale for instance, and that was approaching about $2 million to do that. So my guess to get us to average is going to be somewhere in between the 1.3 and I don't think it was quite 2 million. I think it was maybe 1.8 and 1.9, but I can kind of look at that average. And what I'll do is what I did with Radford's is projected that they're going to give a 5%. So I'll kind of take the average and add 5% to it and see if we can get above that.
I think it'd be extremely hard for us to catch Radford or pass Radford. I think it'd be hard for us to pass Montgomery County.
Yeah, Montgomery County, that's probably never going to happen.
Right.
Hate to say it, but
The other thing is, I do want you to do some research on our assistant elementary principals and compare and find out what the other systems do, whether it's 10 months, 11 months, 12 months, et cetera, because that is a very large gap there on our assistant elementary principals.
I agree. And as you know, or probably know, we at one time, all of our elementary assistant principals were actually 12-month employees.
I know, and I'm wondering if maybe we don't need to go back to that, if that's what it's going to take to get their salaries up to where they need to be.
Or at least 11 months.
Right.
Yeah, let's just, if we can make sure we're comparing apples to apples, that's the thing. It's, right now we don't really know whether we're comparing apples to apples. And, we need to be competitive with whatever we're comparing with. So yeah, I agree with Mr. Benson. We certainly need to look at that. The only other thing I would add, Chris, based on our conversation tonight is, again, moving forward cautiously with the health insurance, to continue to hold harmless for our employees. If in that meeting, the boards feel like they can do a reduction, again, a single digit would probably be better than double digit, and probably about half that 12%. So yeah, just kind of let us know what the recommendation is there.
Mr. Chairman, Mr. Stafford and I had a conversation about that very topic the other day, and no matter what, we would want to budget for the division's contribution to remain the same, and just any type of reduction be made on the employee side, not on the school division side.
Okay, I'm fine with that.
Dr. Sears, I lost you when you were talking about the multiplier for our principals.
Yes.
Or that other systems use for the principals.
Yeah, Carroll County uses a multiplier, and I was saying I wasn't a fan of it when I looked at it, but then when you start looking at the long-term effect of it, it's probably something we would want to consider and look at more in depth, because it's the administrator's salary is based on the teacher's scale multiplied by this multiplier. So as the teacher salary scale changes, our administrator's salary scale would change accordingly, and we wouldn't get into the situation of one scale increasing while another one didn't. It just ties it to the teacher scale, and it may not be a way we want to go, but from the conversation with Mr. Stafford, it does have its merits that I don't think I recognized when we first took a look at it.
Well, again, I don't think we can catch up with Montgomery County on our administrator salaries.
Yeah.
Or even maybe the city of Radford, but we can do better than what we're doing right now.
Yeah.
I'll just give you an example, Mr. Benson, of something that happened very recently. Is we had a principal, and I'll do this. I'll say it in such a way I don't identify the school or any of the people involved. But we had a school where a principal was out for several days, and one of their veteran teachers filled in for several days while that outage occurred. And she is about a 20-year teacher, I think about 20 years of experience. And when the principal came back and discussed about compensating her, if it was anything we could do, and I said, well, yeah, sure, we could pay her the difference, the daily rate between, what she would be on a principal scale. So when Ms. Porter calculated it between, her, where she's at now, her daily rate, and then the daily rate of an elementary principal, it was actually only $15 more a day.
Right.
We'd be paying her. And so I contacted everybody involved, and I said, well, that's kind of an insult to just give her $15 more. So we increased it by a certain amount, but that kind of showed the difference when we're, and it's no fault of ours that we address our compensation based on our funding. And in many years, we've let things go. Our custodial scale is nowhere where it should be, and
Right.
at all these scales. But that's kind of what happens when we, just, start falling behind, really.
Okay.
Any other questions for Mr. Stafford or Dr. Sears? Well, Chris, I think you've got some direction here. Dr. Sears, some direction. I believe we're scheduled for the 23rd. Is that correct?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. The next meeting will be the 23rd, and we will have it in the little theater at Pulaski County High School. We're planning to do some recognitions for our regional champions and state qualifiers at that meeting. We'll have some certificates to present, and Miss Norris's class is working on some treat boxes. Since we really can't set it up as a reception, we'll still make sure they have some goodies to take home with them that evening, and try to have a good recognition for those students before we meet to vote on the budget for next year.
Well, that's more exciting than the budget to me.
First, then you'd like to have a can of popcorn.
Probably not as exciting for Mr. Stafford. He's a budget guy. So, but yeah, it's the accomplishments of our student athletes is that's always a lot of fun. So it's going to be good to see. It really is, and recognize their successes. And we've had a lot of successes lately. So that's good to see. It's good to see.
And one more thing, Mr. Chairman, we're working with Claytor Lake to have an event for our juniors and seniors, a formal beach night for juniors and seniors. And we're sending a crew over this coming Friday to help clean up the beach. And we had so many who were interested in doing it. We're planning to do it 2 Fridays if needed. This Friday definitely, and then the following Friday as well. We'll send a different crew over.
What time?
It'll be approximately 9:30 to 1. Could be closer to 10 before we get them out of the high school. And the cafeteria is going to do boxed lunches for them. They can take it over there and take a break from helping clean up to have lunch, and we'll have transportation and chaperones and all of that in place for them as well.
Okay.
Do you need chaperones?
I don't think that they need chaperones, but I imagine if anyone has an extra pair of hands and a rake, they would be more than willing to have you come over.
We can do that.
Yeah,
I got every tool imaginable in that shed out there. Mr. Hurst, what would you like me to bring you? I got rakes and shovels.
Bring you a pair of gloves.
I got a pink pair of gloves. I'll bring you anything you want.
We will we'll go over and start cleaning up a little bit. It's I actually look forward to that. So that's good. It's
going to be a great event for our students. They're excited about it. The high school finally released a save the date today. We've been holding off on that. Radford High School or Radford County or Radford City Schools met with them today, and they're doing something similar in May. So the folks at the lake, Chris Dawson and the group of people who work over there have just been phenomenal to work with us and make the public beach available for any of our students who want to come over there and participate in that.
That's awesome. I tell you what, our hats off to our high school, because they are extremely creative in making things as normal and as fun as it can be for our students this year. So to Jennifer Bowling and all of her folks there at the high school, thank you so much.
Yeah, they've got a whole week of festivities planned for homecoming week that meet the COVID mitigation guidelines, but it'll be different, but it'll be fun.
That's cool. That's great. It's
Do
good to
we
hear.
have any word on possible graduation?
I received preliminary information today, and of course, like everything that comes out of the Virginia Department of Education, it's embargoed. I will say, based off of what we had, we are planning for a traditional ceremony with COVID mitigation in mind. So but it does sound like, if trends keep up like they have been in Virginia with declining cases, that there's a good probability that we'll be able to hold a traditional ceremony and give each senior a certain number of tickets that will guarantee at least their parents and maybe a sibling or two could come in to see the ceremony as well.
That'd be great.
And we'll know for sure after April 1st. That's when it's expected the official guidance will be released.
Okay.
Super. All right. Does anybody else have anything to add before we close for the evening? Again, want to thank you all for your time. Mr. Stafford, thank you for everything, and Dr. Sears, and putting this together and giving us some things to think about, and hopefully we've given you a little bit of direction as well toward our budget for this year. Once again, thank you all for your time, and we'll be back together